Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of UC Weekly News, where we're smack dab right up against the holidays. So I figured, what better time to chat about? Yeah, what better time to chat about what we saw this year and everything else going on than now with my pal and my partner, Dave Michels. Dave, thanks and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Let's get to it.
I've been souring on predictions. I used to write a predictions article every year, probably for the last 20, 25 years or so in the industry.
I predicted that you would sour on predictions.
There you go. I got a lot of them right, by the way. I'm very proud of that. But you know what? Things are moving so fast. Things that we're unaware of, AI, all the rest.
You got it completely wrong, David. That the reason I'm souring on predictions is because things move so slow. I mean, the predictions this year are the same as they were last year, as the same as before. We're going into year 3 of Gen AI. Guess what the prediction is? Gen AI is going to be big. I mean, this thing's so slow.
Yes. Okay. So it's too fast and it's too slow, but for whatever reason, we're not going to do predictions this year. We're going to break from the mold as we always do. We should have done another Mystery Science Theater version. But anyway, we're going to break from the mold, and what we're going to do is talk about what we've experienced this year and some of the bigger stories that you may not remember that you might want to think about. So I have this list of about 40 of them. We'll probably get to 3. But I think you talked about the first one already, Dave, right? You talked about AI. UC is the letter U and the letter C, but I think this year the UC became the letter A and the letter I. If you're not doing AI and UC, you were left behind. And I'm still not sure how much of that is real versus hype. And there were some interesting things, but generally, what are you thinking about AI this year that you weren't thinking last year?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
Yes.
I kind of fall asleep and tune out when people start talking AI all the time. So the basic problem is that it is indeed interesting stuff, and it is indeed potentially disruptive. We haven't got there yet, and so everyone's kind of waiting for that to happen. But it's amazing to me how much the industry has pivoted to it and talks about it. A great example is the contact center, right? To be a CCaaS provider requires, we could argue about this all day. It requires 20 or 30 key core competencies, right? To really be good at being a CCaaS provider, you have to have this many, I'll just say that, this many core competencies, but they only talk about one. And every vendor is only talking about one. And what's happening as a result of that is that other vendors that only do one thing, such as AI, don't even talk about the rest of the stuff. And so it's getting to be, instead of 20 CCaaS providers we're talking about, we're all of a sudden talking about 100 CCaaS or CX providers, and they all do AI really well. And it's like, well, wait a minute, what about the ACD? What about WFO? What about all these other things? No one's talking about that. And so it's just getting really confusing for the customers.
So we saw this year Zoom drop video from their name, and that's, I'm sure, directly because of AI. We saw this.
I might even say they dropped video from Zoomtopia.
Yeah, exactly. We did say that. We had to do a fake Zoomtopia, if you don't remember that, in order to get some things that we were interested in. We saw Microsoft release a gazillion copilots, except for the one that they're doing in Teams, because for some reason they call that one BizChat. Don't know why. Doesn't make sense, but copilots. We did see them come up with these online agents, which is, agents living in the system that can do cool things like simultaneous translation in your voice and stuff. That's cool. We saw this new word, cover your ears. I know it's going to upset you, Dave. With this new word, agentic. We're now going to be talking about agentic from, it's are you agentic? Of course I'm agentic. Just look under my shirt. It means nothing to anyone, but now it's
I want, for the record, because I don't like the word, I decided to go see what it actually meant and look it up in the dictionary. And guess what? It's not in the dictionary.
Not in the dictionary, exactly. Okay, we did see at WebEx1, we saw an agent or an agentic agent, I don't know, speaking in plain language, able to turn on a dime. That was exciting. It's not released yet, but we did see it.
Saw one from Five9. We saw one from TalkDesk. We saw a bunch from Microsoft at Ignite, although they weren't really contact center agentics. And Google's released a bunch. I mean, it's the new thing. As I wrote about on No Jitter, it's actually kind of an old thing because the way they're actually being used is pretty simple. So to the customer, they're not a new thing. From behind the scenes and what's happening, incredible.
All right, so the summary around it, and the last piece we have to say is just as we're starting to record this, we're starting to see versions of "I will make a video from your text" thing pop up. Google just released their next version, and I love the tagline that they had on theirs, which was basically all video from text sucks and ours sucks less. That was essentially what they said. You could boil it down, but that was really it. But let's talk about the non-story stories, which are there's still no ROI and nothing that you can prove, and you can't really tell if people are liking it or disliking it because there are stats that go in both directions. There's drama. It's like a freaking patent place going on right now, at OpenAI, and who's got board seats, and Microsoft does and they don't, and this and that, and everybody's afraid of everything. And then
And who's been murdered, and who's resigned from the board, and I mean it's just oh my God, the controversy is just unbelievable,
And
unbelievable.
then we're firing back up nuclear power plants and burying data centers underwater to give them power and keep them cool because we don't have enough processing power. And then the last piece of this was somebody said that Google's quantum computing discovered parallel universes.
Yes.
And I don't, at this point, it's hard for me as a data science guy to separate science fact from science fiction. I have my Star Trek communicator here somewhere. I could ask Scotty or somebody, but I think it's still more of an open question than a closed one. If you're
You
getting
know
value,
the thing is with all this AI stuff, and I get it, and every once in a while I have an AI experience that just blows my mind. It's like this is really amazing stuff, but so much of it is unreliable and so much of it is unpredictable that it's kind of a freak show. I noticed in my email now, Google now they offer a summarize the conversation button on every email, no matter how short the email is. By the way, I just received an email from somebody, and there was a date in question, and the person wrote 13/30/24, and I'm in Europe half the time, and so it's like 13/30. Is that a US? Is that wait? There's no such thing as 13/30. And so I sent him a note. What do you mean? And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I meant 12. I meant December." Etc. So anyway, I hit the summarize button, and it said he said this, he said that, and then and it was 13/30/24. So it missed the whole last two emails in the summarized chat about the point of confusion. It's just you can't rely on this stuff.
right?
It's very misleading.
So the bottom line summary from my perspective is that if you're using AI, generative AI, and getting value out of it, bless you, enjoy. Just be careful. You can't trust all of it. But if you're getting power out of it, it's certainly there are parts of my day that are faster. There are parts of a lot of people's day that are faster. But I think it's still more hype than reality. And I don't think anything has settled down yet. So it's going to be interesting to keep watching for next year. So the prediction is no prediction. Um, One of the predictions I got wrong, of the many that I got right for this year, one of the predictions I got wrong is that the office culture wars would die down. Man, did I blow that one. That one was terrible. With the Amazon announcement that you have to return to the office, and news coming out just last week that, oh, by the way, they said they wanted everybody to return to the office, but they didn't do the math and they don't have enough desks for them. So what was that announcement really all about if the results were impossible? Like we had a conversation about that. But there are still massive layoffs in the tech industry from very profitable companies. The whole
David,
culture of
I
power
think, I
war.
think, David, I just want to say once again, you are wrong because actually, I think you got this right. And so you're trying to say you got this wrong. I think the culture wars have calmed down, and what we're seeing about this return to office stuff is just theater, and it's getting headlines like the Amazon thing because it is theater. And like you said, Amazon wasn't even prepared for. But there seems to just be a general awareness that I'm finding from more and more people that I'm talking to that remote work is the way of the norm and the way of the future and the way things are going to be. And so I don't think we're ever going to see a mass return to the office. Of course, there's exceptions. And of course, there's headlines when there are exceptions. But I think you actually got this one right.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take credit for it then. Never mind what I said before. All right. So going back through our list here, I think we have to talk about the prediction that you had that was right about Cisco and Microsoft. cats and dogs dancing together in the streets, and the fact that Cisco added the Microsoft Teams platform to their endpoints, they're doing gangbusters business with that right now. They're displacing a lot of the smaller rivals, and it's certainly upsetting the market. And we haven't even gotten MDEP out there yet, which was another thing we were talking about, and whether or not any of the legacy players, including Cisco, will be changing over to MDEP. So, what are your thoughts about the incompatibles now being buddies?
Well, the part that I got right that you talked about was Microsoft worked really hard to build out their MTR environment with different hardware vendors, and they had it sized right. And then, oh, by the way, we're adding Cisco. It's like, ooh, that's not a footnote item. That's a big item. And so obviously, if Cisco is going to come in, there's going to be a big player in town. Is the growth going to just accommodate that, or is the growth going to be less than the amount of that Cisco is going to grow? And I think that's the reality that we're in. So I think all the other players, some more than others, are being affected by Cisco's growth in that Microsoft space. And I think it was a brilliant strategy on Cisco's part because they realized what was going on with Teams, and they said, we got to hitch to that ship. Hitch to that truck. I don't know what you call it. Hitch to something. So I think that's working out really well for Cisco. I'm a little concerned in general about Microsoft's dominance, and you've seen I've done a couple posts on this. I compared it to the Bell system, but we've never had a vendor in enterprise communications this dominant in the U.S. since the Bell system, and that's tough for a lot of competitors. And so we're used to if you think back to just 10 years ago, all the different UCaaS players and even PBX players and all the different options vendors had. It's really a matter of, do I go with direct routing to Teams, or do I go with operator connect to Teams, or do I just, do I go the Teams native with Teams? It's really become a much narrower conversation, and a lot less innovation is occurring.
Yeah, and it's not on our list, but we also talked about how the phone, the desktop phone, is changing from a communication device, which it still is. We've predicted the death of the phone for years, and it never happened. I still have my phone here. I still have my handset. My ex company is still paying for it, even though I've even blogged and told them to disconnect it. They haven't, so what the heck? But the phone is now an interactive device on the desk. It lets people know that you're there, that you're logged in. It does some presence. It even smiles at you if you buy the right brand phone.
Well, okay, here we're going to disagree a little bit. I do think the phone is dying, and I've been with you. I've been getting calls for 10 years about, is the phone dead yet? And I keep on saying that's ridiculous. It's not dying, but I do believe it's dying now. I think the pandemic actually killed it. Remember, when the pandemic happened, we sent everybody home. We sent them home with laptops. We sent them home with keyboards. We sent them home with mice. We sent them home with webcams. We did not send them home with an IP phone. And the soft phone became more or less normal. And as we go back to the office, people are looking at their phones going, I don't know if I need this phone. Now, here's a prediction, though. This is you're the first, David, and the audience. You are the first to hear this particular prediction, and it's not a 25 prediction. It's probably about 2 or 3 years out. But we're going to see the rebirth of the phone. It's going to be big, baby. It's going to be big. And I'll tell you what's inspiring me on this. The current phones today are kind of dumb. In fact, we went backwards. We went to IP phones. We went to SIP phones. A lot of features you could do on a phone went away because the SIP phone just doesn't do much. It's on hook, off hook, pretty basic stuff. And we can't control the display like we used to be able to. Proprietary phones could control that display. But I've been playing around with this new Google phone that I've got. And Google, of all companies, has actually made a pretty interesting phone environment on the Google phone. So, for example, when I call an 800 number, I get a toll free. I get a bunch of menus. Push 1 for this, push 2 for that. It's displaying the different options on the display. Push 1 for sales, push 2 for support, push 3 for whatever. It's displaying all this as it hears it. It is doing that's just one example, but it's doing a lot of really interesting features. It's like, why isn't this more common? Well, the answer is because we can't control the display. We can't do a lot of this stuff. So I think we're going to see a rebirth of the phone, but it's not going to happen next year. It's going to be a little further out.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Google, so we might as well take that on and talk about some of the big tech news and wobbles and other things that happen. Google was essentially by the courts declared a monopoly, and we're waiting to see if we're going to live through another set of divestiture, which is very interesting. Microsoft had their problems in the European Union, and they've been forced to unbundle Teams. And, oh, by the way, they're raising prices across everything, so that's going to be interesting for them. I think that Facebook, which became Meta because of the metaverse, has now abandoned most of the Meta things. I don't think metaverse is going to happen. They had Spark AR and that's gone. They moved their workplace people over to Zoom's Work Vivo. So, a lot of these big tech companies have sort of like oopsed, like an elephant tripping, and they've
Well,
crushed.
I think you in the previous conversation called this big tech wobbles, and there's been a lot of wobbling. Another one you didn't mention there is General Motors. Just they're a car. They abandoned Cruise. They're self-driving car technology. If GM can't pull this off, the mighty big GM, this is obviously a pretty tough thing. Tesla's been trying it for I don't know how many years. It's going to be here next year, Elon said. But
In 2016, he said it. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's right. So I think that tech is harder than we thought. It's getting harder and harder than we thought. The other thing is, another wobble, and we blew up cable television and satellite television for streaming services because I remember I used to pay like $4 a month for Netflix, something like that. It was great. I don't want the cable. I just want my premium stuff that I want. But all of a sudden, all the streaming services are back to the same prices we were paying for cable. So I think the tech is actually a lot more expensive than people realize it is in general, and I think these companies have to rethink a lot of these things. It's a sad state, but we're moving backwards in many ways. I was so looking forward to the metaverse, but
I may.
But I was looking forward to the second world. What was it called?
Second Life.
Second Life, yeah, I was going to say Second City TV, but I was looking forward to Second Life as well. So it's not the first time this has happened.
There may be a correlation between these big tech companies not being able to accomplish what they've promised and firing all of these people. Maybe it takes smart people to do some of these things. Just a thought.
There is indeed a short attention span on Wall Street, and that's driving a lot of decisions. And one of the things, go back to the Bell system, whatever, they didn't have to worry about that, and they did things like invent operating systems and transistors and all kinds of incredible stuff. But no, if it doesn't pay off next quarter, I'm afraid we're going to have to reevaluate this project. So it's a very short attention span theater, definitely.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer, and I don't want to get into socialism and anything like that here, but I'm a very big believer that if companies that are profitable are going to have mass layoffs, there needs to be some penalty for the management. Either, if you're firing more than 2,000 people, you also have to fire the CEO. It's a requirement. Or you have to pay their health care for 10 years or something to make it more painful. Because what's happening is CEOs and CFOs are doing these mass layoffs in tech, and then their stock's going up. They benefit from it. And until you take away that benefit, it's just going to keep happening.
Well, some of these, we had the shooting of the United Health CEO. So we are finding that there's a threshold to how much the public is willing to put up. What was really interesting, I mean, we have to talk about this. What was really interesting is when there was an assassination attempt on Trump, and people made comments like, too bad he missed or whatever. There were repercussions. I mean, there were severe repercussions, and people had to apologize. And it's like, oh, I never condone violence, etc. But just a few months later, this guy actually gets killed, not missed, not an attempt, but he actually gets killed. And all the social media is like, thank goodness, my condolences are out of network, or all these comments about he deserved it. He had it coming to him. This is a big transition. This is significant that people are getting a little more concerned about their personal rights and their ability to flourish in our economy. So
yeah, that's one of the reasons we're not making predictions, because we are headed for what I believe is a rough patch for the next few years, especially when it comes to these kind of things. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and we'll move on to our last topic for today, which is I put it down as partnerships, and you changed the title to Strange Bedfellows because we had a lot of announcements this year, and we've probably forgotten most of them. We started it with Cisco Microsoft. Obviously that's one of the biggest ones, but there was a couple that you announced at Enterprise.
You got to remember, because some of our viewers may not have the memory span that we have, but it wasn't not that long ago. I remember when there was Skype for Business versus WebEx or Spark, if you remember Spark from Cisco,
Oh, yeah.
and Rowan and Zig would take turns at the keynotes at Enterprise Connect, slamming each other. I mean, they were like, these companies hated each other, and now they're as bedfellows, as you say. But yeah, go ahead with the.
No, well, you had made the big announcement with Avaya and Mitel, right? At Enterprise Connect, and then Zoom was added later in the year.
No, we got that. You're so close. The announcement was Avaya and Zoom, and then
Avaya and
Mitel
Zoom
was added later in the year.
Right,
But,
okay, fine.
so the Mitel and Zoom relationship was added. But yes, so brilliant moves, by the way. And what's so powerful about that move is this was possible 10 years ago, right? There was nothing preventing this 10 years ago, but mindset. And so what's happened is our minds have we've come around, right? So 10 years ago, or even 20 years ago for that matter, but let's just, 10 years ago, Avaya and Mitel and all the PBX makers thought that they would own and dominate the software as a service environment, that they were all investing heavily in it, and they were going to get there, and they knew that they weren't first innovators, but that's okay. They're the established, and they're going to get there. That hasn't played out. In fact, very few PBX makers have made it to UCaaS and CCaaS. On the other hand, Zoom was a native pure cloud play, and they thought 10 years ago, premises will be gone, and we have no need for that. And so they went ahead and, so there was no way this partnership would have happened 10 years ago. Today, we have a huge amount of prem still out there, or private cloud, whatever you want to call it, however it's deployed. And we have a huge, and cloud is still growing. And today, this partnership makes perfect sense. And credit to both companies for realizing to implementing this.
Yeah, and
all three companies.
All three. These are not the only things that were interesting that has to do with Strange Bedfellows. We saw Google. I guess the best word to use is offload their Starline, beautiful 3D video project over to HP. HP's been bragging about it for a year. Of course, they don't have it available for sale yet.
Well, but first you have to acknowledge that Starline kind of went from beautiful 3D down to basically a rally camera and a USB connection. And so then they said, hey, maybe HP should run with this. But and so it kind of downsized first. Important step.
Yeah. So that was one. And then you have all these marketplaces that popped up and changes. Like Zoom, you can now get, and all the Zoom services are available in the AWS marketplace. Neat launched their App Hub. So when you have a Neat device, you can just pick whatever you want and you can engage it from there. And then the one you were talking about was the growth, the blue and green combined, right? RCS has finally come into its sharing. Tell people about that.
Well, the green and blue thing, that was always noise. And I shouldn't say noise. I mean, people do care about that, and people are impacted by that. So that ridiculous, arbitrary, artificial restriction is now going away, but it always could have. Again, this is just a mindset thing. So, the problem was that Apple made their, iMessage, one client for both their chat and for SMS, and it was causing all kinds of trouble. They could have easily separated those anytime, but they didn't. But the bigger story here, as you point out, is the RCS capability, because we're seeing just, especially in contact center, we're seeing huge amounts of WhatsApp as a preferred channel, as iMessage as a preferred channel, all these proprietary over-the-top apps, and the carriers have nothing, and we don't have any universal solution. The only universal addresses we have basically are three. We have email as a universal address. We have our phone numbers as a universal address, and many of our phone numbers can be universal for SMS, but it was broken with Apple. So RCS returns the phone number for messaging, and it's not even tied, by the way. People think it is. It's not even tied to mobile phones. You can have RCS on any phone number, and it's not quite here yet. I mean, it's here. I'm using it every day. But as this becomes more popular, it'll become a preferred channel for contact centers because it's more universal. There's going to be a lot here to this RCS story. We're at the beginning of an interesting journey.
And then speaking of beginnings, we now have Alianza and Metaswitch. Metaswitch being purchased from Microsoft. That's a very big deal for Alianza, right? You predicted that one on our conversation with Scott Wharton.
It's a really interesting deal. I used to work for a guy at a startup a long time ago, and he said every year you have to bet the company. And it's like, really bet the entire company? It's like, you got to make decisions to bet the company. Allianz is betting the entire company. They are doubling. I mean, Allianz is a U.S. based company out of Utah. They only serve the U.S. They have 300 employees, something like that. Don't quote me around there. And they just bought Metaswitch, which is a global company, offices around the world. They doubled their headcount, and this is going to be a make or break thing. And it could be one of the smartest things they've ever, bet the company. It could be one of the smartest things they've done, or it could be the end of Alianza. It'll be everyone is like scooting up and can't wait to see how this plays out. But this whole space, this service provider voice space, I believe is going to be very important the next few years. The pendulum in telecom always swings one way or the other. It's been swinging for the past, 10 years toward away from service provider voice, toward over-the-top applications like Teams and WebEx and Zoom. And I believe we're going to start to see that swing back towards service provider voice for a whole bunch of reasons, which I've outlined in some of the content. So this is a very interesting play for Alianza. Good luck to them.
So this is what we thought was exciting in the year 2024. We've got 2025 here now, right in front of us, and we're going to be at a lot of events. We're going to be at Enterprise Connect, or CES. We're going to be at ISE
World Congress.
Just going to be an amazing year, and we'll bring you more musings. But this is what we felt was important. So thanks very much for joining us. Thanks, Dave. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you.
We'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot.